Previously on Insurance Dudes podcast.
Back then, 2008, 2009, we're making the dials by hand. We didn't have the phone where you put it up to your ear. Hey, flappa. We weren't doing that. But processes that require people to do spreadsheets or track things, a lot of that can be automated away now. You're not running your business off that. You want to make sure that you follow whatever the rules are, because at the end of the day, when they come after everybody, they're coming after everybody.
Insurance dudes are on a mission to escape being handcuffed by our agencies.
How? By uncovering the secrets to creating a predictable, consistent, and profitable agency sales machine.
I am Craig Pretzinger.
I am Jason Feldman.
We are agents.
We are Insurance Dudes.
What are some common pitfalls to avoid when implementing a telefunnel? The common pitfalls, there's a lot of them. And a lot of them are very, very attractive and easy to fall into. Number one, not buying enough leads. If we don't buy enough leads, we don't have enough gas in the car, and it's not going to happen. Now, think of this. Everything falls into place with the math. As long as you understand the math and you also are able to understand the timing and be okay with that, it's going to work. As long as you feed the machine. So you have to feed the machine according to what the math dictates. So this is what I would do. I'd put, okay, well, I want to write 100,000 in premium. So I'd put it in there. This is back in before I even had a spreadsheet to figure all this out. And I'd be talking to my sales leader. They'd come in, help with the math. And the math actually didn't turn out to be entirely accurate the way we were doing it. But let's say we were doing it right and we worked backwards. And I said, I want to do 100,000. Well, okay, great. Then we'd get to some quote number. We'd get to some number of contacts if we were going that granular, and then we'd get to some number of dials. Now, back then, I had a very, very limited understanding about the reality of the math. And I've seen it happen lots of times. So in this pitfall, right, in not understanding the math and not getting enough leads, this is where the problem falls. So to write 100,000 in premium, you figure you're going to have to do, if we're closing 10%, of our internet leads. Let's just say 10%, easy number to go. We're usually around 12 to 13%, but let's say it's 10%. Okay. So we're closing 10% and we want to write 100,000. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that we need to quote 1 million in premium. 1 million. That's a lot. So I desire, and I'm saying it this way because let's think about what that sounds like. Is that emotional or is that logic? I fixated on 100,000 because that's just a number that we haven't hit at that time. And then I desire it. Now, I'm not being logical about that desire because at the moment, one of these metrics seems impossible. Instead of just ejecting and saying this isn't doable, it's like, no. We can still use the leads. We just, we just won't get as many and then we won't have to make as many. Well, that's fine, but we're not going to hit 100,000, right? There's a certain number of leads you need to buy if you want to write 100,000, and we need to quote 1 million, right? We would have to quote 10x to receive 10% of it, right? That's 10%. So really, really important. The first pitfall is to make sure you buy enough leads. And I kind of worked in there the second pitfall, which is be realistic and know your math. A lot of agents come in without understanding the math. I was there. I didn't get it at all. I was looking at all the wrong stuff, right? As case in point, the last example. So we need to make sure that we're looking at the right numbers, we're doing the right math, and then adhering to it, right? If I want to write 100,000, it turns out that it takes 50,000 dials a month to write 100,000, which about right. So if it takes 50,000 dials on, I don't know how many leads it would be, but probably around 150 leads a day, making $50,000 a month, you're going to get to 100,000. That's about right. I found if I followed the math and I filled every part of the telefunnel up correctly according to the math, I get the result. But do I get the result tomorrow? No. Do I get it in 2 weeks? No. Do I get it in 4 weeks? Closer to, right? And that's if I don't change anything, which is the next pitfall. No sudden movements. The telefunnel is like a caged beast, and caged beasts hate sudden movements. That was the weirdest analogy you've ever heard, but I wanted it to stick in your mind. That caged beast cannot handle sudden movements. It freaks out. And another part is, yes, we should always be testing, right? We want to test to optimize. but we don't want to test multiple variables at the same time. So this is what I would find. I find we're 2 weeks in. I wasn't buying enough leads a day, but which is already setting myself up for failure because we won't get results even longer, right? It's going to take even longer to get subpar results because we just don't have enough activity going through, right? Typically, what I had going was I had way too many producers, not enough teleteam, and all of my investment is going into my team. Well, it doesn't do any good to have 4 producers if there's no pipeline being pushed to them. So when we recalibrated everything, it became a focus on feeding that first producer or those 2 producers. You need a core, 1 or 2, and then we're going to feed them until they are at capacity. And when they're at capacity and they're each writing 35 to 40K a month, 50K a month, right? Which is, to tell you the truth, is about 4 to 5 times the typical producer, at least in a captive. If you're independent, it's much higher. But regardless, right? They're writing way more. They're at true capacity as long as you had them doing the 10 quoted households a day. Now we're looking to increase capacity, right? So it's not having 4 and just having a couple of dialing specialists. We want to go heavier on the least expensive thing. That's the highest part of the funnel, right? So if we're looking at our sales funnel or TeleFunnel, the most activity is up at the top. Well, then that means we need the most players running those plays on that activity in order to advance all of that stuff, sift through the rest of the TeleFunnel. Another common pitfall is ejecting too early. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Never do it. I did it too many times and it cost me way too much. If I could add up the cost of blowing it by ejecting all the times that I did to waiting it out a month, 60 days to actually get to the results where it starts consistently producing, would have saved a ton, right? The cost of not doing that, hundreds of thousands. So if I can prevent somebody from making quick moves in decisions about leads that saves them hundreds of thousands, I'm doing my job and I love it. And another important piece, and I think I'll wrap it up with this, is emotional, right? M-I being emotional. I think this is a really, really, really valuable concept to take in and own and make part of your everyday routine before you make a decision. When you see something come up and it's like, you have to make that decision. I have to make that decision. What do I do when this happens? I ask myself, okay, I see I have a decision. Am I going to make this decision based off of emotion or logic? So as I start to process and come up with the potential outcomes of that decision, am I looking at it through my emotional lens or am I looking at it through my logic lens? If I can apply math and reasoning to it, if there's fear or maybe greed or desire or something like that attached to it, it's important to notice that and move it out. We don't want to make a decision based off of emotion. We're freaking out because 3 people called in sick and the leads are coming in and there's nobody to... Are you making an emotional decision? Because this is what I say, never turn off the leads, ever, never. Because the second you turn them off, you just killed the pipeline. You can't trick the math. The math knows that you didn't get leads for 3 days. And there's a consequence to stopping lead flow. And I'm going to leave it at that because that, my friends, is gold. Thank you for listening. See you on the next episode. Appreciate you. And don't forget about the book, $1 Million Agency. All right. Why am I going crazy? You got to go pick that up. $1 Million Agency. It is on Amazon and it is ready for you. It is printed, it is published, and it is an international bestseller, which is freaking incredible. I can't believe how many people in Australia bought this thing. Who knew? So thank you. Grab that $1 Million Agency and we will see you on the next episode. Say bye, AI Craig. Say bye.
Grab the book and maybe real Craig will let me out of the office.